I was never the kind of person who believed in love at first swipe. Tinder was just a joke to me, something my friends used to fill lonely nights with meaningless flings. After my breakup, I swore I'd stay away from dating apps for good. But loneliness has a way of whispering to you when the apartment feels too quiet and the nights stretch too long. One evening, after too many glasses of wine and a little too much self-pity, I found myself reinstalling Tinder. The glow of my phone lit up the dark room as I swiped aimlessly through face after face, people who all seemed to blur together. Then I stopped. It was a single photograph, a close-up shot of a man's eyes, deep ocean blue eyes that seemed almost alive. His name was Ethan. The caption under his picture read, "Truth is not always what you see through your eyes." Something about that line intrigued me. It wasn't corny or desperate like the others. It was cryptic. Poetic curiosity got the better of me. I swiped right, and within seconds the screen flashed. "It's a match." His first message came almost instantly. "So what does someone with a smile like yours do for fun?" We talked for hours that night. He was intelligent, funny, a little dark in humor, just the way I liked it. There was a sharpness in his words, a subtle dominance that was strangely attractive. After a week of chatting, Ethan suggested we meet for coffee at a small cafe near my apartment in downtown Atlanta. He looked even better in person. Tall, lean, perfectly put together. His voice deep and calm, almost hypnotic. We talked about everything: art, literature, travel. He was well-read, charming, and spoke about classic authors with a kind of reverence. When he recited a line from Edgar Allan Poe, it gave me goosebumps. 2 hours passed like minutes. Before we parted, he smiled and said, "How about dinner tomorrow? My place, I'll cook. I promise it'll be worth your time." Normally, I'd say no to a man I barely knew, but something about Ethan, that quiet confidence, made me say yes. The next evening, I stood outside his apartment door. He lived in an upscale building, the kind with dark wood interiors and faint jazz music playing in the halls. He opened the door wearing a simple black shirt and jeans. His sleeves rolled up, a towel thrown over his shoulder. The apartment smelled incredible, like roasted garlic and wine. "Perfect timing," he said with a grin. "Dinner's almost ready." We sat at a small table lit by candles. The room was warm, filled with shadows that danced softly on the walls. Ethan poured me a glass of red wine and we started eating. He'd made lamb burgers, thick, juicy, perfectly seared. But as I took my first bite, something about the texture felt off, too soft, too rich. Still, I smiled politely. "This is really good. Family recipe?" He paused mid-bite, looking at me with a small smirk. "Yeah, family recipe," he said. "Been passed down for years." His tone was strange. Playful, but heavy. After dinner, we stepped out onto his balcony for some fresh air. The city lights shimmered below like fallen stars, but as I inhaled, my nose wrinkled. Something in the air smelled burnt, almost metallic. "What's that smell?" I asked, glancing toward the covered grill in the corner. Ethan followed my gaze. For a moment, he didn't answer. Then he chuckled, a low, almost hollow sound. "Just leftovers," he said. "A little late-night snack." Curiosity got the better of me. "What are you cooking?" He smiled wider. "Why don't you see for yourself?" He lifted the lid and the smell hit me, thick, greasy, and nauseating. On the grill sizzled something that looked like a patty, but the meat was dark. Too dark. The edges were almost black, but what made my stomach twist was the strand of long blonde hair tangled in it. My fork slipped from my hand. "What the hell is that?" Ethan didn't answer right away. His smile faded. Then slowly he said, "You don't like it?" My heart pounded. "Ethan, I need to go." He grabbed my wrist, his grip shockingly strong. "You're not going anywhere." The look in his eyes had changed from charm to hunger. There was nothing human in them anymore, "Don't you see?" he whispered, leaning close enough for me to smell the faint coppery scent on his breath. We were meant to be together forever. Panic surged through me. I jerked free, stumbling backward, knocking over a metal bucket near the railing. The clang echoed in the night. Then I saw what was inside. A skull, bleached, clean, along with several long bones stacked like firewood. My body went cold. Ethan lunged. "Don't ruin the food," he shouted, his voice breaking with rage. I grabbed the first thing I could, a metal spatula from the grill, and swung it. The sound of steel hitting bone cracked through the silence. He fell. I ran. By the time the police arrived, Ethan was still unconscious. Inside, they found a hidden room, a cold storage area filled with vacuum-sealed bags, each one labeled with a name. Each name matched a missing woman from the city. The news called him the Tinder Cannibal. Sometimes I still dream about that night. The smell of burnt meat, the whisper of his voice, and in my nightmares he's still there, standing by the balcony, smiling with those perfect blue eyes, whispering, "We were meant to be together, forever." It had been 9 years since my terrifying encounter with Ethan, yet I still found myself swiping on Tinder. I told myself I was ready this time, smarter, more cautious. But love has a way of blinding you, especially when curiosity and attraction mix with loneliness. That night, I matched with Olivia. She was 36, divorced, and lived in a quiet suburban area not far from my apartment. Her photos were striking, confident, radiant, with a mischievous glint in her eyes. Her bio was simple. "Life's too short to be boring. Looking for adventure?" We clicked immediately. Her messages were witty, flirtatious, and unafraid. Within hours, we were laughing, trading stories about classic rock, horror movies, and the small-town drama that neither of us could stand. "There's something electric about you," she typed one evening. I felt a jolt in my chest. We decided to meet at a small bar she recommended, dimly lit, cozy, with old wooden booths and a jukebox that only played hits from the 80s. When she walked in, I froze. Olivia was breathtaking. Her confident gait, that effortless charm, and the way she owned the room without trying. I was captivated. We talked, flirted, laughed, and drank a little too much. She was blunt and I liked it. "I hope AG isn't a damper," she said. I blinked. "AG? I like younger men. Don't worry, just a fun one-night thing." I smiled, slightly intoxicated. "Sounds perfect to me." After the bar, she invited me to her bungalow. The building was old, Victorian style, with an air that felt almost unreal under the silver glow of moonlight. Inside, the house was immaculate. Antique furniture, dark wood paneling, heavy drapes, everything in place. Yet something felt off. The creamy textured carpet in the living room clashed with the antique decor, standing out like a sore thumb. "I love this place," I said cautiously. Her smile was disarming. "Daddy sold oil. Shot himself when I was 3. I got the place in the divorce." She offered me a drink, whiskey neat. We settled onto the couch. Her touch was intoxicating. The room was quiet except for our breathing and the faint crackle of the fireplace. There was something magnetic about her, something brutal and honest in her gaze. I wanted to trust her. I wanted to believe this night would end with laughter, not fear. But then the nausea hit me. As she led me upstairs, a wave of queasiness rolled through me. Before I could stop myself, I vomited on the carpet. The same creamy carpet that had first caught my attention. Olivia's demeanor shifted instantly. Her calm, charming face twisted into rage. "You idiot! You ruined my carpet!" she screamed. She grabbed a mop, her movements sharp, controlled, precise. I stammered apologies, hands shaking, but she didn't calm down. The carpet, a symbol of her family, her past, her control, was now tainted. I fled. The night ended, but the fear didn't. Years later, I saw her face plastered across the news. Olivia, now 45, had been arrested. Her bungalow, the same one I had narrowly escaped, was the site of horrors beyond imagination. The police had uncovered a secret basement, a torture chamber where she had held young men, lured them under the guise of romance, and carried out unspeakable acts. One victim had escaped and alerted authorities. Cannibalism, evidence of previous lovers, and the final, most shocking revelation, the creamy carpet, made of human skin. I shivered as the memories flooded back. The velvet smoothness under my hands, the suffocating elegance of her home. How close I had come to the same fate as those poor men. Even now, 9 years later, I cannot forget. The allure, the charm, the horrific truth, love, danger, and madness had danced together in that house, and I had survived. It had been a long week, and I was scrolling through Tinder more out of habit than hope. I told myself I was done with drama, done with weird encounters, but sometimes life had a twisted way of drawing you in. Then I saw him, David, 27, Australian globetrotter, with a sun-kissed tan and tousled blonde hair that looked perfectly effortless. His smile was infectious, the kind that could make even the most cynical heart skip a beat. And around his neck, a blue beaded necklace that caught the sunlight just so in every picture. We matched instantly. Our conversation flowed naturally, as if we had known each other for years. Flirty banter, light teasing, discussions about the city, travel stories, favorite beaches, everything felt easy. "So, what does a gorgeous girl like you do for fun in Boston?" He typed. "Mostly exploring the city and avoiding bad dates," I replied with a laugh. "Oh, you deserve a good one," he shot back. There was a warmth in his words, a playfulness that made my chest tighten in anticipation. We agreed to meet at a downtown pub the next evening. I arrived early, a little nervous, scanning the room for a glimpse of him. Minutes stretched into an hour. I watched people laugh, strangers flirt, bartenders move with practiced ease, yet David never arrived. I checked my phone repeatedly, my excitement turning into frustration. Finally, I texted him, "Where are you? I've been waiting for over an hour." A few moments later, a reply appeared, along with a photo. It was the pub. The same night, the same lighting, yet he wasn't visible anywhere. Confused, I texted again, but the replies became stranger, inconsistent, almost elusive. Eventually, I reluctantly agreed to meet him for coffee, hoping this time would be different. But it wasn't. We kept missing each other, crossing paths without realizing it, until one night I saw him again, in a crowded nightclub. The same tousled hair, the same blue beaded necklace. He stood across the room, almost like a shadow, watching me. I approached, my heart racing, only for him to vanish into the crowd. Something wasn't right. The unease, the inexplicable coincidence, the feeling of being followed, it gnawed at me. Curiosity and fear pushed me to unblock his number. I called, but again, no answer. Minutes later, a message arrived. A photo, me sitting on my couch staring at my phone. Every hair on my body stood on end. Before I could respond, another message arrived. A newspaper clipping. David's face stared up at me from the page. The headline, "Australian surfer, fourth victim of the Boston Barbie, matched on Tinder the night before his poisoning." My blood ran cold. David had been dead for months, murdered, poisoned. A victim of a serial killer who preyed on unsuspecting Tinder users. I trembled, my fingers hovering over the phone. Another message appeared. A photo, me from behind, taken that very night on my couch. I spun around, expecting someone to be standing there, but no one was. Yet on the floor, where no one had been moments ago, lay David's blue beaded necklace. The chilling truth sank in. I had been followed, watched, and somehow I had survived again. The thrill, the attraction, the danger. It all collided in a horrifying crescendo. Love, curiosity, and obsession had danced together in the dead of night. And the echoes of David's presence, or his ghost, lingered long after. A reminder that some encounters are far more deadly than you could ever imagine. Lily had always been cautious about dating apps, especially Tinder, after hearing countless horror stories from friends. But after a particularly lonely month, she figured, why not? She swiped through profiles with mild curiosity, scrolling past the generic ones until Alex's caught her eye. His smile was disarming, genuine, and his bio hinted at a love for urban exploration and old bookstores. Two things Lily adored. Something about him felt different. The conversation started innocuously, with jokes about their mutual love for coffee and indie music, but quickly moved to late-night confessions, whispered through texts, that made Lily feel a connection she hadn't felt in years. When he suggested meeting for coffee in a small, quiet cafe near her apartment, she agreed without hesitation. Alex arrived wearing a soft gray sweater and jeans, his tousled brown hair catching the afternoon sun. He had a presence that was hard to ignore, warm, charming, but with an intensity that Lily couldn't quite place. They talked for hours, laughing over spilled lattes, sharing stories of childhood pranks, first heartbreaks, and the little eccentricities that made them human. When Alex suggested he stay at her apartment for a couple of nights since he had work nearby, Lily hesitated at first, but the charm in his voice and the way he looked at her made her agree. It seemed harmless, a stranger she trusted, at least for now. The first night was quiet. Alex kept to himself, reading on the couch, occasionally smiling at Lily, making small talk about her day. But the subtle signs started the next morning. A misplaced mug here, a chair slightly askew there. Lily thought nothing of it at first, blaming her own absent-mindedness. Then came the notes. Small, handwritten messages slipped under her bedroom door. "You looked amazing in your coffee shop sweater," and "I noticed you stayed up late last night. Sleep well?" Each message made her stomach twist. She hadn't mentioned her late nights to anyone, yet Alex knew. By the third day, Lily noticed him lingering longer in the kitchen than necessary, watching her from behind a half-closed door. She joked about it at first, laughing nervously, but the unease didn't fade. One evening, while she was in the shower, she heard the faint sound of her bedroom door opening. Her heart raced as she wrapped herself in a towel and cautiously stepped out. Nothing seemed out of place, yet the feeling of being watched was suffocating. She locked her bedroom door that night, only to wake up to the sound of her closet door creaking open. The paranoia grew. Every time she left the apartment, she would triple-check locks, double-check windows, and still couldn't shake the feeling that Alex was always somewhere nearby, even when he was supposedly at work. One afternoon, she found a small camera hidden among the books on her living room shelf, angled perfectly to see the couch and doorway. Panic surged through her, her hands shaking as she realized the notes, the subtle movements, the knowing glances. All of it had been planned. Alex had been living in her apartment longer than she realized, sneaking in at odd hours, watching her, documenting her life. Desperate to reclaim control, Lily confronted him. She asked where he had been when she wasn't home. His charming smile faltered, replaced by a look of mild irritation, as if she were overreacting. But when she pressed, he grew quiet, his hands tightening around his coffee mug. The charm was gone. The intensity, the hunger behind his eyes became undeniable. Fear clawed at her chest as she realized she was no longer just dealing with an obsessive date. She was dealing with someone who had meticulously inserted himself into her life. The climax came late one night. When Lily returned home from work early, the apartment was darker than usual, shadows stretching across the walls. She called out Alex's name, but only silence answered. Stepping inside, she noticed a faint glow under the kitchen door. Her heart thudding, she approached, and there he was, crouched behind the counter, photographs of her scattered on the floor. Each photo captured her in private moments, brushing her hair, making tea, reading by the window. The invasion of her life, her privacy, was total. He looked up, smiling softly, whispering, "I just wanted to know everything about you." Lily's fear turned to adrenaline-fueled action. She ran, barricading herself in her bedroom, dialing 911, explaining as best she could the extent of Alex's intrusion. The police arrived, but even as they took him away, she couldn't shake the feeling that the apartment would never feel safe again. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow cast in the corner, reminded her of the days he had been silently watching. The terror lingered, a constant echo in her mind, a chilling reminder that the person you invite into your life might already have been inside in ways you cannot imagine. Weeks passed, but the scars remained. Lily moved apartments, changed numbers, and reinforced her home with locks and alarms. But in quiet moments, she would catch herself checking corners, noticing the small details of daily life, where shadows fell, whether someone lingered just a second too long at the cafe. Alex's presence had left a permanent mark, an invisible thread of fear that would weave into the fabric of her daily existence. The story of the vanishing roommate wasn't just about a date gone wrong. It was about trust, invasion, and the terrifying realization that some monsters aren't in masks. They are the ones who smile at you, who claim to care, and who, while you blink, make your entire life their playground. When Sophie first moved to Portland, she was excited about starting fresh. A new apartment, a new city, and a chance to leave behind her messy dating life. Her friends insisted she try Tinder, claiming it was the fastest way to meet someone who actually gets you. Reluctantly, she downloaded the app. She swiped through dozens of profiles, bored by the typical gym selfies and forced smiles, until one profile stopped her cold. His name was Julian, mid-30s, dark hair, piercing gray eyes, and a smile that seemed to promise secrets. His bio was enigmatic: collector of stories, lover of old houses, seeker of reflections. Something about it pulled her in. Their messages began innocuously, with the usual small talk, but quickly turned into long conversations about architecture, haunted places, and old legends of the Pacific Northwest. Julian suggested they meet at an Airbnb he had rented, an old Victorian-style house that had recently been restored. "It has mirrors everywhere," he said with a mischievous tone. "I promise you'll love it." Sophie hesitated at first, the idea of a stranger's home covered in mirrors unsettling. But the curiosity and thrill outweighed her caution. The house was a marvel: tall ceilings, ornate woodwork, and mirrors covering nearly every wall. As she walked inside, Sophie felt both enchanted and unnerved. The mirrors reflected the warm glow of the candlelight, but the reflections were somehow wrong. A shadow seemed to linger a moment too long, and corners of her reflection appeared distorted. Julian greeted her with a warm smile, his presence magnetic. "Welcome," he said. "I hope you're ready to see things differently tonight." As the evening progressed, they talked over wine, the flickering candlelight casting strange, dancing shapes across the mirrored walls. Julian guided her through each room, telling stories of the house's past, former owners who had vanished, strange occurrences reported over decades, and rumors of people seeing versions of themselves that weren't quite real. Sophie laughed nervously, partly entertained, partly unsettled. She couldn't help noticing that every mirror seemed to reflect something slightly different than reality. Her smile lingered too long. Her movements appeared delayed, and in some reflections, she glimpsed another figure just behind her, gone the moment she turned. The tension grew as Julian suggested a game. "Let's play a little reflection game," he said, eyes gleaming. "You stand here, look into the mirror, and describe everything you see. I'll do the same." At first it was fun, a peculiar, slightly creepy game. But then Sophie noticed it. Her reflection didn't mimic her actions exactly. She raised her hand, and her reflection's hand lingered in place for a moment before moving. She frowned, heart pounding. "That's odd," she whispered. Julian's expression darkened, a barely perceptible smile twisting at the corner of his lips. Sophie's unease deepened when she wandered into a small study filled with antique furniture and floor-to-ceiling mirrors. A diary lay open on the desk, its pages yellowed and fragile. She glanced at the writing, accounts of people visiting the house lured by Julian's charm, and then disappearing. The words seemed impossibly old, yet the handwriting was unmistakably modern, too precise. Panic prickled at the back of her neck. She turned, intending to call Julian, only to find him standing behind a mirrored wall, impossibly still, almost blending into the reflection. He stepped closer, his voice low and hypnotic. "Do you see now? The mirrors don't just reflect, they trap. They capture moments, desires, fears, even people." Sophie backed away, but the mirrors multiplied him, making it impossible to tell which reflection was real. A sudden realization hit her. Every reflection in the room wasn't just showing reality, it was rewriting it, echoing her deepest fears. She screamed and ran, only to find herself trapped in a hallway of mirrors that twisted endlessly, leading her nowhere. Desperate, she smashed one of the mirrors with a chair, hoping it would break the spell. The cracks spread like lightning, and for a moment the reflections froze. Then the other mirrors began to ripple, distorting further. And from their surfaces emerged figures, glimpses of previous visitors, lost in the mirror's labyrinth, their faces twisted in silent terror. Sophie's blood ran cold as she realized the house wasn't just haunted. It was alive, feeding on the fear and obsession of those who entered. Julian's voice echoed around her, omnipresent and chilling. "Every person who comes here leaves a piece of themselves behind, and now you will too." Panic turned to adrenaline. Sophie dashed toward a small staircase at the end of the hall. but the mirrors reflected dozens of herself, each one stepping slightly ahead, cutting off escape routes. In a frantic moment, she grabbed a heavy candlestick and smashed a mirror, breaking the illusion just long enough to run into a small hidden door she hadn't noticed before. The door led to a narrow passageway, the air stale and cold. She could hear Julian's laughter bouncing off the mirrored walls behind her, echoing endlessly. As she sprinted, she stumbled into a small room at the back of the house, a storage room, empty except for a single mirror leaning against the wall. Gathering all her courage, she smashed it. The sound was deafening, and for a moment the house seemed to shudder. The other mirrors cracked simultaneously, their trapped images dissolving like mist. Sophie ran, burst through the front door, and didn't stop until the house was far behind her. Outside, in the cold night air, she could barely breathe. Her reflection in a nearby car window was finally hers alone, unharmed, whole. But even as relief washed over her, she couldn't shake the memory of Julian's words, the distorted faces in the mirrors, or the sensation of eyes following her from the shadows. The mirror house had claimed many before her, and its stories would continue. Sophie knew, though she had escaped, that a part of her fear, her caution, her very essence had been left behind. A reminder that some dates aren't just bad experiences. Some are encounters with something beyond comprehension, lurking just behind the reflection of normalcy. I had always thought online dating was harmless, just a way to meet people when life felt stagnant. But that changed the day I matched with Lucas. His profile was flawless. Tall, dark hair, piercing green eyes, and a smile that seemed to reach deep into your chest. His bio was simple, almost too perfect, but something about the subtle humor in it drew me in. After a week of chatting, he suggested we meet in person, not in a coffee shop or a bar, but at his cabin, tucked away in the mountains. I hesitated. At first, unsure if this was safe, but there was a charm to his persistence, a boyish confidence that made me feel like everything would be fine. The drive to the cabin was longer than I expected, winding roads flanked by thick, looming pine trees. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the forest floor, and I felt a thrill of excitement mixed with unease. Lucas welcomed me with a warm smile and a bottle of wine, and the cabin itself was charming in a rustic way. Stone fireplace, wooden beams, and a faint smell of pine. He offered a tour, showing me the rooms one by one, and at first I didn't notice the carvings on the walls, intricate symbols etched into the wood that seemed almost ritualistic. Dinner was prepared like a scene from a romantic movie. Candlelight, flickering across the table, soft jazz playing from a small speaker. We talked, laughed, and I started to relax, thinking perhaps my initial instincts had been wrong. But as the night grew darker, small things began to unsettle me. A photo frame slightly tilted, a door that creaked open by itself, and subtle whispers I couldn't quite place. I noticed a stack of letters on the counter with names I didn't recognize, and my stomach twisted with unease. Lucas poured another glass of wine, and I drank nervously, trying to mask my apprehension. He smiled, leaning closer, his eyes catching the firelight in a way that made them look almost predatory. I tried to excuse myself to the bathroom, but when I opened the door, the room was small, cluttered, and I caught a glimpse of something shiny under the sink, a camera lens staring at me. Panic surged through me, my hands shaking as I confronted him. His smile widened, but it wasn't the charming grin from before. It was something darker, almost satisfied. He explained that he liked to keep mementos of people he cared about, and that his cabin was a sanctuary of sorts, filled with objects and photographs of past guests. My blood ran cold. Objects, photographs, people. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. He reached for my hand and I yanked it back, my heart hammering against my chest. I had to get out, had to escape before I became another entry in his twisted collection. I ran through the cabin, tripping over rugs and knocking over chairs, and Lucas's laughter echoed behind me. Hollow, haunting, like it had been rehearsed for centuries. I burst out onto the porch, the cold night air hitting my face, the moonlight reflecting off the dense forest. I darted down the path toward my car, but every step felt heavy, as though the shadows themselves were reaching for me. I didn't look back until I was safely inside my vehicle, the engine roaring to life as I sped down the winding roads. The police later confirmed what I had feared. The cabin had been used for months as a trap for online dates, a curated gallery of unsuspecting people who had trusted Lucas. Hidden cameras streamed live to multiple devices, and his obsession had grown into something unimaginable. I was lucky, incredibly lucky, but the image of those carved symbols and the glint of the camera lens stayed with me for weeks, a haunting reminder of how quickly charm can turn into horror. Even now, months later, I can't scroll through dating apps without flinching. I wonder if Lucas is still out there, still looking, still waiting for the next match. I have deleted my profiles, changed my routines, and yet, in the quiet moments of the night, I feel his presence lingering, just beyond the edge of vision, just beyond the reach of reason. And I know with a certainty that chills me to the bone, that charm can be a mask, and sometimes monsters wear the most human faces. I had just moved into a high-rise apartment in downtown Seattle, and the first week of unpacking was exhausting. One evening, while I was heading to my car in the underground parking, I noticed a man waiting by the elevator. His profile picture had caught my attention on Bumble weeks ago, and now, by sheer coincidence, he was standing there, tall, wearing a navy coat and a subtle, confident smile. He introduced himself as Ryan, and I felt an immediate spark, a mix of curiosity and relief, someone familiar in the maze of new surroundings. We started talking, and I found myself laughing more than I had in days. There was something magnetic about Ryan, his voice calm yet intense, his eyes holding a kind of mystery I couldn't look away from. He asked if I wanted to join him for a drink that evening. I hesitated but ultimately agreed. The bar he chose was intimate, tucked away on a side street, dimly lit with flickering candles and dark wooden panels. We sat close, exchanging stories about past relationships, travels, and the quirks that made us who we were. The chemistry was undeniable, the kind of connection that makes you feel like you've known someone forever. Even though it's only been a few hours, after a couple of drinks, Ryan suggested we head back to his apartment to continue our conversation. His high-rise overlooked the city skyline, lights shimmering like a river of stars beneath us. I felt a flutter of excitement, but also a faint twinge of unease, an instinct I tried to ignore. The apartment was sleek, modern, and immaculate. Everything gleamed under the soft glow of pendant lights. I admired the view, the polished floors, and the subtle scent of cedar that lingered in the air. We talked, laughed, and the night felt perfect, until it didn't. I noticed a series of mirrors lining the hallway, each one taller than I expected, stretching from floor to ceiling. They reflected the apartment's sleek beauty, but there was something off. Something in the reflection moved differently than reality, subtle shifts that made me catch my breath. I mentioned it casually, hoping it was just a trick of the light, but Ryan's expression changed slightly, almost imperceptibly. He smiled, but there was an edge to it now, a tension beneath the charm that hadn't been there before. Curiosity, fear, and fascination battled inside me as I followed him into the living room. He offered me a drink and I took it, but the taste was metallic, bitter, lingering in a way that made my stomach twist. My reflection in the nearest mirror caught my eye, and I froze. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw another person standing behind me. A shadow, pale and watching. My heart raced, my throat dry. I tried to laugh it off, telling myself it was exhaustion, nerves, maybe just the city's eerie energy at night. Ryan suggested we move closer to the mirrors, showing me a game he liked to play. A psychological trick he said would help you see things about yourself. As he guided me, his hands brushed mine, but there was something firm, almost forceful in his grip. I tried to pull back subtly, but he held my wrist for just a moment too long, and the air shifted. The shadows in the mirrors seemed to move independently, stretching, twisting, and I could swear one of the reflections grinned at me. My pulse raced, every instinct screaming that this was wrong. Then I noticed the small keyhole in one of the mirrored panels, just at eye level. I knelt slightly to look, my curiosity overpowering my fear. What I saw made my blood run cold. The reflection in the mirror didn't match my movements. It smiled when I frowned, leaned when I straightened, and behind that reflection, A figure crouched, watching. Ryan's voice was calm, soothing, but there was a new darkness in it. "It's just a trick of the light," he said. But I knew it wasn't. Panic surged and I tried to leave, but the apartment's layout seemed to shift, hallways stretching longer than memory allowed. Doors leading back to the mirrored hallway, no matter which way I turned. The reflections multiplied, each showing a version of myself that looked wrong, distorted. Eyes too large, smiles too wide. I screamed, pounding on the nearest door, but it was no use. Ryan stood behind me now, his charm completely gone, replaced by a tense, unnerving focus. My fight or flight kicked in, and I noticed a fire extinguisher mounted nearby. Grabbing it, I swung at the nearest mirror, the glass shattering with a deafening crash. The reflection screamed too, though it wasn't me. The shards scattered across the floor, reflecting fragments of the apartment, fragments of Ryan and fragments of the unknown figure lurking in the mirrored world. I bolted, tripping, cutting my hands on the shards, but I didn't care. I needed out. By some miracle, I burst through the front door into the night, lungs burning, heart hammering, the city lights blurry through tears. Ryan didn't follow. I ran to the street, flagged down a taxi, and didn't stop shaking until I was back in my apartment, locking every door and window. The next day, I discovered online reports of missing people in the area, their last known locations often near tall buildings with mirrored interiors. I reported what had happened, but the authorities seemed skeptical, chalking it up to panic and imagination. Even now, months later, I avoid mirrors in public. Avoid high-rise apartments. Avoid anyone who smiles too perfectly. And at night, when the city is quiet, I can still see him in the corners of my eyes. Hear the soft footsteps behind my reflection. Feel the impossibly calm, dangerously magnetic presence of Ryan. I don't know if he still waits in another mirrored apartment, or if the figure in the reflection follows me now. But I know one thing for certain: charm can hide terror, and reflections are never as innocent as they seem. It was a crisp autumn evening in Chicago, the kind where the city lights reflect off the river like scattered sparks, and the air carries a subtle chill that makes you pull your jacket closer. I had just broken up with my long-term boyfriend and decided to dip my toes back into the dating world. My friend insisted I try Hinge, claiming it was different from Tinder and that it might lead to something exciting. I wasn't entirely convinced, but the idea of swiping through profiles while sipping hot cider sounded harmless enough. That's when I saw him, Luke. His photos were impeccable. Candid shots of him on mountaintops, holding skateboards, laughing with friends, and staring into the camera with eyes so piercing it felt like he could see straight through me. Something about his smile made my chest tighten, a combination of comfort and danger, like a puzzle I wanted to solve but didn't know if I should. I swiped right, almost hesitant, and to my surprise, we matched immediately. His opening message was simple, playful, and full of subtle humor, making me smile in a way I hadn't in months. Our conversation quickly evolved from text to late-night calls. We shared stories of past heartbreaks, small victories, and secrets we hadn't told anyone else. Luke had this way of speaking that made you feel like he understood the deepest corners of your mind. Yet there was a hint of something unplaceable, a shadow behind his words that made my stomach twist with both excitement and unease. Finally, he suggested we meet in person, proposing a rooftop bar with panoramic views of the city. I agreed, eager to see him in real life. The night of our date, I arrived early, heart racing, nerves tangled with anticipation. Luke was already there, leaning casually against the railing, jacket unzipped, hair tousled perfectly as if by fate. We hugged, and for a moment, the city below faded away. Conversation flowed easily, laughter mingling with the hum of traffic and distant sirens. We shared drinks, and with each passing moment, I felt a magnetic pull drawing me closer to him, as though the world had narrowed to just the two of us. Then he suggested we step further out onto the rooftop, near the edge, where the view was most spectacular. I hesitated, the wind tugging at my hair, a primal sense of caution whispering in my ear. Luke's smile was warm, persuasive, almost hypnotic. "Come on," he said softly. "You'll never see the city like this." The ledge was narrow, barely wide enough to feel stable, but the lights of the skyscrapers below were mesmerizing. and for a moment I forgot all caution. As we stood there, the wind whipping around us, Luke suddenly stepped closer, brushing my arm, and whispered something that sent a chill through me. His tone was gentle, intimate, yet there was a dangerous undertone, something almost predatory. I glanced down at the street below, the height making my stomach lurch, and noticed a strange figure across the rooftop, hooded, motionless, watching. I froze, my pulse spiking. Luke's eyes caught mine, a flicker of amusement there that didn't reach his smile. "Do you see it too?" I whispered, but before he could answer, the figure vanished. Panic surged and I tried to step back, but Luke's hand shot out, gripping my wrist with a surprising strength. "Stay with me," he murmured, his voice silky and unyielding. My instinct screamed to pull away, yet there was something mesmerizing in his gaze, a dark allure that made it almost impossible to resist. I struggled, heart pounding, legs trembling, as the air seemed to thicken around us. The city below, once sparkling and inviting, now looked menacing. A sea of lights hiding shadows that whispered threats I couldn't understand. Suddenly, I noticed the rooftop door was slightly ajar, and behind it, a room filled with objects that made my blood run cold. Ropes coiled neatly, glass jars with odd substances, photographs of strangers, all pinned to a corkboard, each with a date scribbled in red ink. My breath hitched and I realized with horror that these were not random items. They were a meticulous collection, trophies of obsession, each a part of Luke's hidden world. The playful charm I had been drawn to was gone, replaced by the raw, terrifying reality of his intentions. I pulled at my wrist, my nails scraping against his skin, but he didn't flinch. "You're safe," he said, though his tone carried an unmistakable edge, a warning hidden beneath reassurance. My mind raced, connecting fragments of stories I had read, news articles about missing people in the area, disappearances linked to charming strangers with a hidden darkness. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. I was in danger, and the rooftop, beautiful as it seemed, had become a cage. Desperation fueled my movements. I kicked, twisted, and finally managed to break free for a moment, stumbling toward the rooftop door. Luke lunged, but the force of my panic pushed me through the narrow gap. I tumbled down a short stairwell, heart hammering, scraping my hands and knees, adrenaline overriding pain. I burst onto the street below, gasping, the city now a blur of lights and movement. Pedestrians glanced at me as if I were another frantic city dweller, unaware of the horror I had narrowly escaped. Police reports later confirmed my fears. Luke had a history, records of obsessive behavior, and accounts from women who had disappeared after meeting someone like him online. He vanished after that night, leaving behind the rooftop bar and the evidence of his twisted collection. I never matched with another stranger online the same way again. Cautious of charm that seemed too perfect, smiles that hid secrets, and the magnetic pull that can sometimes lead you to the edge of something unspeakably dark. Even now, years later, whenever I walk past rooftops, I glance up, half expecting to see him there, watching, waiting. The memory of the wind on that narrow ledge, the city lights below, and the sudden, horrifying realization of danger remains etched in my mind. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes the thrill of connection online can mask the most sinister intentions, and that the world, though seemingly bright and full of life, can hide monsters in plain sight.